I made this game for the GMTK Game Jam 2022. For those who do not know, a game jam is a challenge in which you make a game under a time limit. This jam had a 48-hour limit, and I was soloing this jam. Let's get right into how I made this game. The jam began on July 15 at 1 PM. The theme was announced through a video on the GMTK YouTube channel. The theme for the jam was Roll of the Dice. Except, I wasn't there at 1 PM. I was busy and didn't get to know the theme until 3 hours later. This theme was pretty unique, and it was actually pretty difficult to come up with a unique game idea. After some brainstorming, I combined a few of my previous ideas together to create one idea. You play as a die, and whatever side is facing up is the ability you must use. You then use those abilities to defend yourself from enemies. The 4 elements would be fire, water, lightning, and healing, because obviously healing is a natural resource. What are you talking about? This, in my opinion, was a pretty good idea for the jam. It was a simple idea that I could actually execute. So after that, I got to work. Except I was busy. Again. So all I got done on that day was player movement I stole from a previous game and some broken dice rotation. Thankfully though, my weekend was completely free, so I could get work in. I went to bed, preparing to wake up early the next day. I woke up early, did my morning routine, and got to work. I started off the day by finishing off the player controller. The night before, I was working with Unity's default rotation value, which was a number from 0 to 1. This was a very inconvenient thing to work with, and it caused a lot of issues. That night, I learned that there is something called the local Euler angles, and it was a number from 0 to 360. This made dice rotation much easier to implement, and I managed to get a die who'd roll onto one side each time. Although, if you get the die on one really specific angle, you can get it stuck, but we don't talk about that. After that, I went on to low spec and went color palette hunting. After a bit of searching, I found the Pair 36 palette by Pineapple on Pizza. I made placeholder scriptable objects for the elements. I then booted up Sprite and got to work on the element icons. After I finished drawing the elements, I started working on shooting. I stole the rotation code from my previous game, Time Attack, and followed a Brachy's tutorial for shooting. And my goodness, I want to punch my Time Attack past self for making the most unnecessarily complicated shooting script. The Brachy's tutorial took like 10 lines of code. Anyway, now I had shooting. Yay! I made some projectiles and hooked up shooting to the player rotation script. Now whenever the player rotates to one side, a certain type of projectile shoots. I also added a cooldown timer so you can't auto-click or 20 clicks per second gamer jitter click. I don't want people who enjoy destroying mice to have an advantage. I also tried making the scriptable objects set the projectile speed and damage, but for some reason that just didn't work. So I just set it all in the prefabs. I also made this one small change that literally made my game 90% better. I made it so that whenever the player rolls to another side, the cooldown is no longer stopping the player from shooting. That means you can constantly swap between sides to shoot really fast. Then I made some more art. I made a player spray, a fireball spray, a water slash, which is just a recolor of a spread I made in a certain previous game, a healing potion, and a lightning projectile, which is just the lightning icon but sideways. I then started working on the health system. I needed an enemy, so I added a giant pink rectangle. I made the health system, and an accident became a feature. You see, if you accidentally throw the health potion at an enemy, it heals that enemy. I thought this was pretty interesting, so I kept it in. I made an icon to appear above the player to show what element you are currently using. Health bars were also added for both the player and enemy. I also experimented with adding squash and stretch to the jump, but it looked weird, so I scrapped that idea. After that waste of time, I proceeded to waste even more time by spending an unreasonable amount of time making run and jump particles for the player. Although, it did come out pretty good, so maybe it wasn't such a time waster. I then took a break for lunch. By now, vlogging channels would have shown you the most aesthetically pleasing lunch ever. I am not that channel. I am bad at recording videos. So here's some more game dev. After lunch, I got started on the enemy AI. My initial concept was a flying enemy who would move to your position, but I would have clumped together all of the enemies, so I made a random offset to the position. But now the enemy can't really attack you, so I made a shoot you. I made an enemy shooting script, which was pretty simple thanks to my previous work, and now it's working. Oh dear. For a little bit of fixing, and there we go. We have a proper enemy. But this enemy looks kind of bland, so I drew and animated an enemy. I introduced to you the evil flying checker piece. I imported it into Unity, and there we go. Now I can technically call this a functioning game. Hooray! I quickly stole some code from Time Attack, again, and now we have enemy spawning. Now we have a game loop. Nice! I added a flash effect when you get hit, so that your shots actually feel like they did something, and now this game is better than all of my previous projects. I also added a little animation to play when our enemy is about to shoot. I then proceeded to waste time by trying to make a proper level, but failing because I had to manually change the colliders each time. So I just decided that I'd make it with a tile map later. To end off the day, I made a switch to a different scene whenever the player dies, and a timer to actually have some sort of point to playing. Tomorrow would be the final day to work on the game, and on that day, I turn it into a somewhat presentable game. Sunday, the final day. The day to turn it into a presentable game. I started the day by making a tile map and made a proper level for the game. I then made a main menu with only the play button functioning. Now this game needed some music. I can't make music, so I searched for music on opengameart.org. After 10 minutes of searching, I found 3 pieces of music. One for the main menu, one for the main game, and one for the death screen. I then stole the music manager code from my previous game, Area 2+7 squared. The music was properly set up. I followed a Yawarakakusuru tutorial and managed to get scene transitions, which made the game seem much more polished, although there was an issue where different frame rates would have caused the transition to stop too early. So I extended the time much longer than I probably should have. Although, we have an issue. This background is looking whack. Incredibly whack. So I made a proper background, and now the game is actually somewhat pleasing to look at. With only 3 assets, and with some smart placement of objects, I made it seem much bigger than it is. I then added a high score to the game, although it took me 10 minutes before I realized I made one minor mistake that screwed up the whole high score system. Does the high score work? Yes, it does! Let's go! I added an enemy death animation and debugged an issue where an enemy could just rise out of the grave to shoot you. I fixed it, although I'm not 100% sure if I properly fully fixed it. I also added some little animated icons for the main menu, but we need a tutorial, so I made a scene which explains all the elements. Except I forgot to change the setting in the canvas which scales the UI properly, so I had to restart the UI for that scene. Fun. Finally, I added some basic sound effects and I built the game, and there was an issue. There was this weird issue I never noticed with the rolling of the player die. It's just easier to show the issue rather than explain. And that issue was thanks to me neglecting to change the way I handled rotation in code from rotation to local Euler angles. So I changed that, and now the issue is solved, and the game is done. I built the game for Windows and Linux, suffered through Unity HTML building, and finally we can submit. Except I couldn't upload images to the itch page due to the excess amount of people uploading, although I'm thankful I submitted an hour before because around 10 minutes before the jam ended, itch.io crashed. The yearly tradition of the GMTK Jam crashing itch happened again. In conclusion, I had a lot of fun making this game. I don't think I've worked on a game this hard before, and it came out pretty nicely. I did have a bug with the player sticking to walls and the water element being simply too OP, but I should be able to get this fixed quite easily. I really enjoyed making this game, and I think I might have another update or two after the update with all the easy fixes. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching, and if you want to play this game, the link will be in the description. Please subscribe if you enjoyed watching this, and I hope you have a good day. Bye!